Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jen Jones. I am CWEA's Executive Director and CEO. We'd love to see who's with us today. Please give a shout out in the chat. Let us know your name and where you're viewing from. And check out the Zoom controls at the bottom. The chat can be shared with everyone who's participating. So be sure to meet and greet those who are participating alongside you. Just so that you know, a recording of today's discussion will be posted on our websites later this week. So if you should miss something, that will be available. If you'd like to ask any questions to our panel, and we love having questions, please click on the Q&A icon and type in your question. Both CWEA and BAYWORK are on your side. Our primary mission as organizations is helping you succeed. Get involved, become a member, attend events, take tours, start networking, and start building that great water or wastewater career. CWEA has 17 local sections across California, and we always welcome students and young professionals to join our events. BAYWORK focuses on career outreach and training in the Bay Area. Both of our organizations are extremely welcoming and inclusive communities of wastewater professionals, and you'll find networking is one of the best ways to learn about career opportunities and excel once you've found your dream job. Join us both and get involved. We'll put links to our website and our upcoming event calendars in the chat, so be sure to bookmark and save those resources. Coming up for CWEA is our annual conference taking place from June 7th to the 10th. This is our largest event of the year, and we're hosting this event virtually once again in order to promote safety. A couple of the sessions that I'm looking forward to that might also interest this audience are Invisible Barriers, a session about diversity, equity, and inclusion in water, the Women Impacting Water Brown Bag Lunch, as well as the Mentoring Brown Bag Lunch. Learn more about the amazing program online at ac.cwea.org. So it's my great pleasure now to introduce Karoline Terraza. And Karoline is the Organizational Performance Manger at Union Sanitary District. USD is a wastewater treatment agency serving over 350,000 customers in the South Bay region. She provides oversight to the district's strategic planning, continuous improvements, emergency, and training programs. Karoline is a CWEA member and is the chair of BAYWORK's Women in the Trades Committee. Please give a warm welcome to Karoline. And Karoline, with that, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Jen, for that warm introduction. Hello and welcome everybody to today's panel. I'm definitely honored to be here and to moderate this great discussion. It was exciting to see where everybody's from, up and down California, and just really excited to have everybody here today to join us. Before I introduce our panelists, I just want to talk a little about the goal of today's webinar. As you can tell from the description, we have 4 amazing women that are going to share their experiences and their opinions over some pretty broad topics. So we really just will be scratching the surface, if you will, on topics such as entry barriers, some of the social norms, and then we'll end on a little bit of a discussion of mentorship. But this is really where all of you come in, the audience. As I prompt our panelists to share on some certain topics, I definitely encourage you to share your thoughts as well, and really based on the level of responses and your comments, we're hoping to determine which of those topics are most of interest for everybody in this group. There could be a possibility that we have a future series of webinars where we can dive deeper into some of these topics. So definitely interact in the chat box. Feel free to add your thoughts to the questions, as well as if you have questions specific for our panelists, we will do our very best. We'll have a Q&A at the end, but we'll go through, and if we can, we'll answer it in the chat box throughout. and answer some of the questions at the very end. So let's get to the fun stuff. So today we're going to be hearing from Tyrese Powell-Slaughterback, Reclamation Operator 2 at Otay Water District, Dr. Violet Renick, a senior scientist in the Environmental Laboratory and Ocean Monitoring Division of the Orange County Sanitation District, Margot Schuler, now retired, but a former civil engineer and distribution system superintendent from East Bay Municipal Utility District, and Marjorie Del Toro, founder and president of EHS International. All right, ladies, so we're gonna get started in our very first question and hear a little bit of your background. But we all have very unique paths, right, that brought us here to this place in our career. For some of us, we might just be beginning in the field, and for others of us, we're experienced veterans. What we like to know is, how did you learn about the position that moved you into water, that really brought you into this industry, and what was it that appealed to you? And we're going to have all of our lovely panelists answer this question, and we'll start with Tyrese.
Hello, everyone. So my father is a wastewater operator for LA County. So I've known about wastewater since I was about a teenager. So it's always been in my life, basically. And as I got older, without having a lot of guidance, I realized maybe I should finally give wastewater a shot. So I went through an internship where I was later on hired at that facility, and I've been an operator since. At the moment, I hold a grade 3 license, and I'm now here working for Otay Water District.
Thank you. How about Marjorie?
Hey, Caroline, thank you. As mentioned, I'm Marjorie Del Toro. I'm the president and founder of EHS International. Many of you know us as EHS Inc. I have been a proud member of CWEA for almost 20 years. I say almost because I literally lost track. What brought me to industry is kind of a fun story. I was introduced by a client of mine. His name was Hoyt Pemberton. Those of you that have been in industry for a while probably know who he is. He worked for a local water distribution plant. He encouraged me to attend a collections event sponsored by the Santa Ana River Basin section known as SARBS. I attended my first collections event with heels and a suit. Yeah, didn't fit in, big mistake. At this particular event, I was approached by Ralph Palomares. Those of you in industry know exactly who he is. He's a highly regarded industry expert, specifically in collections. Ralph approached me and immediately took me under his wings and proceeded to show me the ropes. His first advice, yeah, you guessed it, lose his shoes and the suit. I knew at that point that I was with my kind of peeps. I grew up with 3 brothers, only girl, and a bit tomboyish, and quite honestly disliked suits, a little uncomfortable, and fancy shoes. I knew at that point this industry was for me, and so my journey started. I look forward to sharing more stories. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you, Marjorie. How about Violet?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It's so great to be here. My name is Violet Renick. I'm a senior scientist in the analytical laboratory at the Orange County Sanitation District here in Fountain Valley, California. And so I bring, I think, a bit of a different perspective in that, I'm coming from the science background and laboratory operations in terms of monitoring for water quality and wastewater discharges. And for me, I have to admit that wastewater treatment and water utilities are something that I think I took for granted in a lot of my life and really wasn't directly exposed to. It wasn't until after my finishing my graduate degree, I got my first professional job working for an environmental consulting laboratory in San Diego, where I was really exposed to the needs of water utilities and wastewater permittees in terms of their permits and their monitoring requirements. And in that context, I really learned a lot about toxicity testing and water quality testing and the importance of that. And from there, I moved on to manage the toxicity testing lab for the city of San Diego and their ocean monitoring discharge permit, and was there for a few years, and eventually found out about an open position for the Orange County Sanitation District in their laboratory, and I've been here for 3 years. And I think for me, especially as a scientist, the thing that really brings me joy and that I find the most value is that we are working every day to contribute to clean water and environmental protection. And so it's very highly applied and something really important, and hopefully something that less people take for granted as we can get the word out and get more people involved. Great to meet everyone.
Thank you, Violet. Yeah, I think probably many of us share that common passion of just being environmentally aware and having a positive contribution. How about we hear from Margot?
And my story is a bit long, but I have a few more years added to it. I started my working life as a clerk in unemployment insurance, and a bunch of welders came in one day and said, they filed for unemployment, and I looked at what they were getting, and they were getting in a week what I was earning in a month. And they suggested that the Rosies from World War II had just opened the doors to working in the shipyards, and that if I went to John O'Connell, then a local high school that was teaching welding, learned to weld, I could walk through the door and get a job, which I did. From there, I went to engineering school, and from there, I learned that really one of the key things in our universe, as all of the previous women have mentioned, is the value and critical nature of water and wastewater treatment. And I knew I wanted to commit to that in industry as an engineer. I found that engineering wasn't for me. What's nice about this industry is that once you're in it, there's a lot of opportunities for doing different things. And I ended my career as a superintendent working in distribution and maintenance in the streets with the trades. A joyous, joyous, joyous full circle.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to also point out that Alec has been doing a great job sharing some resources from the different agencies that we are involved in. So feel free to grab some of those links and take a closer look in the chat box. Thank you, Alec. And thank you, everybody. I'm really excited as we keep forging ahead here with some more questions. And thank you each for sharing your journey with us. Your experiences have really led you to where you are today. To even Margot's point, for some of us, the door was there. We had the opportunity to walk through that, but we also know that's not always the case, right? Our topic for this webinar is on the barriers to entry into the industry, because some of us have definitely experienced that. I would love to hear briefly from each of you, of our panelists, what you believe one of those barriers might be. I also, again, try and get dialogue going with our audience, share some of your experiences or some of your thoughts when it comes to barriers. We'd like to collect some of that feedback. So I will ask Marjorie, you want to share?
Sure, I get to go first. Now, I want to mention that my perspective here is that of a vendor. Sure. So keep that in mind. I work with a lot of the agencies. 75% of my business is working with the water industry. And so I know a lot of people in industry. So I wanted to share that. It's a little bit different perspective from some of the other, panelists. So Karoline, after we discussed this, I really thought about this question a lot. And my twist on this is a little bit different. I think what we do as women, and many people do this, but especially women, is the barrier that we create for ourselves. And a lot of it is based on our own insecurities, or we feel maybe we lack some knowledge. So my initial barrier was wrapped around my own knowledge of the industry. The passion that people have in this industry is unmeasurable. I knew immediately that in order to gain respect was by respecting the industry itself and absorbing all I could. I have to share this story. I will never forget my first tour at a wastewater facility. That was so much fun. So I'll never forget that tour. Let's just say I wish I had an SCBA. My goodness, the beautiful order was just, let's say, memorable. Now I'm used to it, for the record, but it was, I'll never forget that moment. It was so much fun. And of course, our tour guides were, laughing at us there. The other barrier, which we'll discuss later in this discussion, has been being a woman in a male-dominated field. Now, we'll of course touch base into that a little bit in the future, but those are some of the barriers. And being, when I started this industry, you know, I've been in business for about 25 years now, and we do environmental health and safety. So when I first started this business, and I was young, that was one of the biggest challenges, being a young female in a male-dominated field. So I look forward to having more discussion on this as we move forward through this program. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marjorie. Yeah, having a tour of our plant was part of my interview process, and I was fascinated by it, but I would agree, just not having the experience and not feeling adequate enough with that knowledge. But thank you so much for sharing that. How about Tyrese? What would be one of the barriers that you've experienced or that you believe is there today?
Well, I definitely had a rocky start getting into the field, and especially in wastewater, just overcoming the smell, the dirty tasks that I've learned to love for my job. But one of the things that I've noticed that's been difficult is often being mistaken as a man. Between my name and my job title, people read my name and they instantly think I'm a man. So whether it's via email or I've attended job interviews and they're like, "Hi, Mrs. Powell," and you're not Mr. Powell. And right off the bat, that becomes very intimidating when you're trying to, you know, build your confidence up for this interview. And then you show up and they're like, "Oh, it's a woman. Oh, this is not what we expected." So then it reflects to me, it's like, okay, well, now I have to really, really outshine on this interview because I'm not what they expected. So that has definitely been a challenge for me as I go through my job in my career.
Absolutely. I can only imagine just seeing the physical or hearing their tone change and then you having to adjust and respond to that. That's got to be pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. How about Violet? Was there a barrier for you, or what do you believe their barriers are today?
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to begin by saying I really resonate with what both Marjorie and Tyrese were saying as well. I think, you know, I think we probably share a lot of the same common issues and barriers as well. I think coming from my, you know, a science perspective, in terms of thinking about how to even get into the field, training and guidance, and what opportunities are provided, I think there's really a lack of that. I do think that it's shifting in the right direction, but a lot of work needs to be done. But you know, starting in elementary school, high school, undergraduate, and especially graduate school, both undergraduate and graduate school, in my experience, I wasn't really made aware of career options in water and wastewater, and their importance in terms of, you know, application, applied science, and contribution to society. And I think just exposure to that really can open people's eyes and really increase diversity and inclusion, and especially for women. You know, we can maybe take advantage of some of the opportunities we have now in this virtual world, maybe by you know, offering opportunities through, you know, virtual open houses, or mentorships, job shadowing for younger folks or early career people who might be interested in the field, who might not have known. And then I'll just add, I think sometimes, you know, there's whether it's real or perceived barrier with personality types. I think, speaking from experience in my personality, I tend to be very bubbly and positive, and I like to have fun. And sometimes I think it's easy to equate that with being less serious and less professional and having less experience. And that is not true. But I think that comes down to being persistent, doing your work, showing your work, coming to the table, and showing that you really know your stuff and not giving up on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Violet, for sharing that. I really like to hone in on the awareness piece, because I know that's something that BAYWORK and CWEA, these associations and all of us are investing our time and energy today for this webinar. And it's just about creating awareness. And you're right, the virtual environment is a great way to do that. I've seen agencies offer job shadowing days. And if we can do more of that and get access to the information to women even at just a younger, in middle school, grade school, high school, things like that. So I'd agree. Thank you. And how about you, Margot? Did you face any barriers coming into the industry, or what do you feel are some today? Oh, you might be muted.
Might be muted. There you go. Thank you. I came into the industry at a time when a lot of women were coming through engineering, and that was the door I came through. Tyrese, still not a lot of women in the trades. When I was welding, women represented 1.8% of trades workers in this country. I think we're up to 2.2% now. So we don't see that door in front of us very often. One of the things I also wanted to remark on, Tyrese, your lovely comment about people changing your name. My name is Margot. It's a woman's name. I would get return letters to Mark or Mark. Oh. There was not a woman applying for this job, and they made me a man and gave me a man's name. So it's not just the name, it just is.
Okay, because I was like, I don't know if it's my name or what, but
your name.
I guess, I don't know. However you think, Tyrese, man, woman, I don't know. But I checked female on my job application, so.
And my name is clearly female, but they fixed that for me. I do think that the issue of jargon, and Tyrese, I think that's where you might have had a foot up on a few of us. You heard the language. And one of the things about the go to visit a virtual workplace, getting young girls into work, there's a lot of jargon. And when you're applying for something and people use the jargon because they don't know it's jargon anymore, once you're in this thing, it disappears as unusual language. And so sometimes you miss what somebody's saying because you're unfamiliar with the language. So I think that that's one of the things BAYWORK does fantastically. One of the things that conferences do, it exposes us to the language. And I would urge people to really try to help your daughters, your young friends, everybody you know who's a woman, share the language of our very specialized work so that they hear it, they normalize it, and it becomes part of the way they can then speak when they go into an interview.
Yes, thank you, Margot. I agree, the jargon, right? And having a leg up or a leg down, right? And being able to educate yourself on that. I wanted to jump in real quick into the chat box because there's such great things in there. And I know Alec is kind of helping take a look at this, but there was some talk about apprenticeships and getting access to those. And if we know of any, if we can share any of our links or locations for that, right? Just trying to, there's so many great comments. I'm trying to scan through them a little bit here. I'll continue moving on with the questions, but Alec, if you catch anything that's we definitely want to share out loud, let's do that. And if you have questions, be sure to use the Q&A.
Carolyn, I've been trying to follow the chat too, which is really hard. I want to hear so much about what everybody's saying. But one of the things that was mentioned was the issue of ageism. And I get that is a challenge for partly because we don't, as girls, see this as something we come to young. Tyrese, you're an exception here, I think. So often we're coming to it a little older. There is a tiny advantage in this industry in that this is one of those industries where once you're in it, age is no longer a barrier. So that's kind of a, doesn't mean getting in as an older woman is not a real feat and a real challenge. And again, you'll be hard work getting in, but once you're in, the ageism kind of fades.
I'd also say too, for the women that are in, we're very proud of what we do. I was just reading in the comments that someone reads books to the elementary kids or shares what they do, and I love and fascinated talking about the processes with my kids and their friends and things of that. And so we definitely seem to talk and share our passion for what we do. And that's one way to kind of increase sort of that word of mouth approach. But we will now move on to the next question, which let me get over there. This question actually is for Teresa and Margot. And the question is, wastewater and utilities in general is of course known to be a male-dominated industry. It would be very easy for us to look around the room of candidates and who would most predominantly be men and talk ourselves out of qualifications for the position. I know you've already shared just a little bit about this, but Tyrese and Margot, have you ever struggled with this? And what did you do to push past that experience?
Margot, is it okay if I go, or do you want to go first?
Please.
Okay. Well, I was hired on at a job. And once I got there, my coworker informed me that there was other candidates that were more qualified than me. They had higher certifications than me. And I didn't know him at all. He didn't know my previous work history. So it was interesting that he thought it was okay to let me know that he thought that I wasn't the most qualified person for this job. And I put a smile on my face and I said, thank you, and walked away. But moving forward, I had to learn how to take how people see me and the assumptions that comes with it. And a lot of that I do ignore. And it can be very discouraging at times. And I have to prove myself time and time again that I am qualified for the job. I can do my job and I can do my job efficiently and well. So that's not an everyday struggle that I go through, but it's definitely a struggle that I go through, whenever I do change in job positions or a new place of employment.
Mm-hmm. I think it's used when we had talked, it's about just earning that, I guess, level of respect through your education and experience and time put in, right? You're not only male dominated, but there's also men that have been there for a very long time. So you're proving yourself by age and also being a woman and just being able to do the work. So it's a constant thing that we're working through.
It is.
Yeah. And how about you, Margot?
Well, I'd like to say that the lack of confidence thing also is one of those wonderful things that tends to go away with age. So you can look forward to that. But I think one of the things that really helped me as a younger person was if I did something very physical before I went into an interview or a test or anything, if I rode my bicycle there, if I walked fast, if I had to do something very physical, if I let my physical energy get in the way, that just ate me alive. So that was a trick that worked for me as a younger person. I don't have to expend so much energy anymore. Good thing. But one of the other things I wanted to just call into question as somebody who became a hiring supervisor and hired a lot of people, we all have unconscious biases. And what's marvelous about the world today is we have lots and lots of people exposing those to us so that we can begin to learn and see. And two of my biggest unconscious biases as a hiring supervisor in the trades were about size and age. And I tended, Tyrese, to favor older people because I felt they had experience. Exactly what you're saying. And it's doubled by the fact that women tend to be a little smaller.
Yes.
Small women are really, really brutally viewed.
Yeah.
But the reality is, in most of the world, girls and women do this work because it's manual and it's hard and it's constant. It's only where we have machines that are capable of doing the physical part that we've made men go in charge. It's a bizarre contradiction. This is one place in the world where you don't need brawn to do this work. And it took me a long time. I'm a big woman, just
I'm on the smaller side.
I get that. And you look young. And I get that. And it was my daughters who pointed out that unconscious bias of mine, because I rejected a candidate and they both thought, I was telling them about him. I thought she was really good, but she was this really small young woman, and they went off the rails. And so, Karoline, one of the things I asked your family member to do was not tell me anything about the candidates I was going to be interviewing. I did not want to know how old they were. I didn't want to know what gender they were. I didn't want to know anything about them. I didn't want to know where they grew up because I made racial assumptions. I needed to know nothing about them as people until I could meet them and talk to them, because the unconscious biases are there. It's who we are. We're weird people. We're weird creatures.
Absolutely.
So anyway, that I think is a hard one for small, young-looking women.
Well, I would also add that I just actually went through a training on confidence in the workplace, and learned that confidence isn't just necessarily a trait or characteristics. Confidence really comes from taking risks and doing things outside your norm. And the more you do that, the more confidence you have. And I think in that scenario of the question I asked of, whether you're stepping into a new internship or you're applying for a job or you're at your test for whatever work that you're going to do, and you see the audience in the room, I think just taking that moment back to what got you, what placed you in that room, what goals you achieved or what risks you took, or the education, or just the fact that you went to that room because that's something that you desire to do. Just remember that can bring confidence too, and being able to kind of maybe shut out some of that around you. So, but thank you, absolutely, Tyrese and Margot, for sharing. And then I also, again, in the chat box, it is wild in the chat box. I love it. Please keep sharing your thoughts on this, because I know that there's other ways to kind of get past that experience when you were in that really male dominant room and you're trying to decide if you're qualified enough for the same position as someone sitting next to you, right? That could be a very difficult situation. All right, so the next question, now we're going to move, not only from just entry and some of the barriers into the industry that we're in, and it's been mentioned before, the reality is that there are challenges that continue to be there for women in the industry. And so the challenges of being a female in a male dominant field don't just stop once you get the job. Even when there's that need, and we mentioned this too, whether it's a real concern, a real challenge, or it's self-thought, we present that within ourselves. We feel like we have to continue to prove our qualifications or that we're qualified. Marjorie, can you share what you've experienced? This can go a couple different directions, and feel comfortable how you want to share that. What either you've experienced, either with those that report to you, or with your peers or your clients, I guess, right? And what have you challenged to defend? What have you done to challenge to defend your position, right, within the industry, because it continues to be there? And again, just real quick, the audience, feel free to add to the chat box, for those that have that kind of ongoing challenges that they experience.
Uh-oh, things are changing. Thanks, Karoline. I really want to have a conversation with everybody, and I love this panel. I love how we're all just so open about some of our challenges. And this question came about because I was having a conversation with Karoline and talking about my years of experience and some of the challenges that I had and some of the challenges that I've learned the hard way. And I know we have a lot of students here that are interested in networking, interested in meeting other people in industry. And a lot of times when we do that, it's normally at conferences. So I want to share with you the word perception. Perception is a really powerful word. Perception could be, it's my perception is my reality, right? That's my story, and you're speaking to someone else and they have a different perception. So they might, whatever they're seeing is what they're seeing as their reality. It's just a lot when there's conflict and people can't seem to agree. And what people forget to do is to understand that that's their perspective, and you must, honor and appreciate those perspectives. So when I was thinking about this question, one of the challenges that we had when I was a young professional, even now, there's still that, perception you got to fight through, is like Therese was saying, she was saying, you know, when you go in, they immediately assume you don't know enough because you look young, or you're just, there's just stereotypes that are out there. And one thing that I learned while I was out there, while I was networking, is the challenge for me was being a woman in industry, right? You're in a large room of males, and you want them to take you seriously. And when you're young and you're bubbly, right? We're full of life. It's easy. What I found is a lot of the men, or even women, it's not just men, but we're talking about, you know, the challenges as women, is for them to take you seriously. And one of the things I want to talk to you, like I want to talk about my product, right? I can help you with safety. And they'll look at you and like, oh, she's a cute little girl, let's give her some time, right? Or she's young, what the heck, you know? And that was really frustrating for me. So what I want to do, and I'm hoping as we continue this series, is talk about teaching young ladies and teaching all of us, I'm still learning, is teaching us, look, when you do this, the perception can be this, right? You being flirty, they might think this about you. And we don't know that. I learned this the hard way. I'm an expert at this because I made every mistake in the books. Well, if I want to be part of them, let's drink with them. Or if I want to, you know, get their attention, let's be part of the good old boys. And that's a challenge for us as women, young women that are coming into the industry. I've seen this over and over again. They need to understand how they need to step out of themselves. We know our intentions, but they need to step out of that and go, okay, how can that be perceived by a different sex? How me being touchy-feely, I'm Mexican, we're touchy-feely, I talk with my hands. So yeah, I immediately go hug. So these are things that could give a bad perception of who you are and not realizing. I'm not saying don't be yourself, because one thing I tell my team, I have a team of women in sales, and I have this discussion, and I make sure that I have meetings with them and let them know, look, you know, this is what I observed, and I want you to be you, but this is how I saw it from being at a distance. And it's not criticism, it's literally just teaching and going, because we don't know. As a young professional, I didn't know that was coming across that way, or until somebody maybe mentioned it to me. And I don't think there's enough discussion around that. So even in the workplace, you know, you're visiting a certain area a little too much and people gossip. It's just human nature. So how do you control that a little bit? What are some actions maybe you shouldn't do when you go in? And that's the biggest challenge, I think, for a lot of us in industry and women in industry, is not knowing, truly not knowing, innocently not knowing how we're coming across. So that to me is one of the biggest challenges that women face. And to the students that are on here, I want you to know you need to start thinking about that. I know we're friendly, I've seen it. And I know you're drinking, and I'm not saying don't drink, but know your limits. And when you do something to an extreme, it is perceived and it will affect how people, and it's really difficult to get rid of a bad reputation than it is a good one, right? People tend to forget the good and just focus on the bad. So I hope to continue this conversation moving forward, but that is a huge challenge for young women, and I think all ages really, is just going in there and getting them to accept you. I learned how to deal with that as I got older, of course, change my mannerisms and change some of the things. I'm still making mistakes, trust me. I'm not perfect, that's not what I'm trying to say. However, I realized that what I needed to do, even though they did talk to me, maybe because I'm a girl and there's not many of us in a room, that men are extremely intelligent, you know, they'll come to you, but stop the flirting and start talking industry, you know, and I'm not saying to flirt, but it's just a natural transition where it's perceived that way. But if you know your stuff, that's where you get to know, and that's where you grow. I've been in industry this long because I knew I had to prove myself. I knew that I had to come off as an expert in this industry. So students, young professionals, just know that. And again, get off my soapbox because I'm so passionate about it. But hopefully we'll see other events like this and really get into the depth of it and talk about that.
Yeah, I would definitely, no, thank you. I would love to talk further and talk about strategies and give some feedback. You're right, perception, once you have a negative perception, it's really hard to, not that you can't, but it's hard to come back from that. So self-awareness, as young professionals going into this industry, starting strong with a good self-awareness or someone there that can give you that feedback. And I just think about your employees and how fortunate they are that you give them that observation and help them grow. And for all of us to kind of find someone to help us do that. Thank you. No, I really appreciate how passionate you are about that, because that's something that's extremely important for us as women. I wanted to ask the same question to see if Violet or Tyrese, is there another challenge that maybe you've dealt with in your career as a woman in a male-dominated field that you'd want to share?
For me, probably just speaking up more. I have a bad habit of not speaking up enough. Margot will know this. As operators, we meet at the beginning of our shift every single day. We talk process control, talk about on-call situations that happened overnight. And if there's a problem that arises, I've noticed that I will stay quiet because I'm afraid or I don't feel confident in that moment to say what I think. And that's something that I've struggled, and I still do struggle with every single day. There'll be a comment made and then I'll think and I have my thought. And then it's like, oh, should I say it? I don't know. Well, maybe it doesn't matter. And then before I know it, they're moving on to the next topic. So that's something that I've literally beat myself up about in speaking up and doing better, because that's how I show my confidence. That is how I gain respect from my peers, by speaking up, by showing what I know. So I encourage everyone to speak up as much as you can, because staying quiet is that's not good for you. It's not good for your job, the environment, the job that we're doing. So
yeah,
that's definitely a struggle.
Yeah, and there is a bigger picture, and we have the knowledge, and your feedback that you could share could make a big difference in a process or a step. So absolutely continuing to work on our confidence and speaking up. That would, again, for everybody listening, if that's something, that's definitely a skill. It's something to kind of work towards and a challenge. Absolutely. There's times when I have that too. And some of it could be because of technical knowledge or what have you. I also look at years of experience, and I've been 5 years in the industry, and I sit next to these amazing mechanics who've been here, they're ready for retirement, been here over 30 years, and they're just so incredibly smart that I see or think of something, and I always preface my questions. This might be a silly question, and they've taught me, don't do that. Ask the questions, you're learning, and that just excites them to kind of share and like that contribution. But thank you for sharing that, Tyrese. How about you, Violet? Any experience or challenges?
Yeah, I have two thoughts that come to mind, and one is a follow-up to what Tyrese just said. I think that is incredibly on point, and I've experienced that as well. But even more so, I think I really struggle sometimes with advocating for myself, not just contributing to a conversation, but saying, no, actually, I'm the right person for this job, and here's why. I think it's hard sometimes as women, you don't want to come off as like showing off or being too full of yourself, right? And we struggle with this like internal conversation where I think it's probably just a matter of listening less to those voices in your head and just really sticking up for yourself and advocating for yourself, because it's your responsibility. No one else is going to advocate for you like you can advocate for you. So I would just add that that's something that, I still struggle with, and but I think is incredibly important. And then I was going to throw in, just since it hasn't been brought up yet, I think something that's been, extremely relevant to me in my personal life right now is growing a family. And I know this doesn't apply to all women, but I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, and just the the challenges that I've faced in the last 4 years of being in the position that I'm in and trying to advance my career and take advantage of as many opportunities as I can, while also being a mother and taking maternity leave and not being able necessarily to or willing to work directly with wastewater or chemicals while I'm pregnant, all of these things, and sort of the guilt that you can experience, I think, as it being in that position can be, and sort of compromises and sacrifices that we still have to make are very real. And I think that again, we've made a lot of advancements in terms of employer support and flexibility and understanding, but I think that there's still a lot that can be done. And I think some of that is just, again, advocating for yourself and your needs and making it clear, what is and is not possible and how that shouldn't be detrimental to your advancement. And that to make sure that vocalize your interest in continuing to receive opportunities, once you have the time available again, and so that doesn't that's not detrimental to you. So that's something that's very much on my mind, and I think relevant to a lot of women who are having children or who have had kids, who are interested in it, and something that I think employers need to continue to think about as much as they can in terms of what support they can provide.
Yes, thank you for that. I would agree. I think there have been some improvements, right, from a benefits or just employer support from that, but work-life balance and, being a mom or single parent or whatever it might be, will create more challenges with the line of work we do. I know in my previous career, I had to make some changes, and looking back now, and like you said, Violet, it's a lot about being your self-advocate and speaking up. And I noticed that in some of the comments there. But thank you. So we have 2 more topics and 2 more questions. I'm watching our time here. I think we'll be okay, but definitely 2 very important topics. And one of them, sadly, harassment and assaults does not escape our industry. It's a reality, right? And this we can fairly say is a challenge that we would experience or could experience. In a previous webinar hosted by CWEA, one of the panelists did share their personal experience of harassment. And I know Marjorie and Margot, you both have shared with me some similar experiences with this. And I really appreciate your unique perspective on the topic. And I was hoping that each of you can take a little time to share how we can address harassment and how or what can associations like CWEA and BAYWORK do to help create awareness of the topic. How can we really hit that topic, head on and address it? And how can these associations support that? Marjorie?
Thank you. It's an important topic. And, we've gone through the Me Too, we've gone through, and there's been a lot of positive movement, but it's definitely still out there. So I would like to preface this that what I will be sharing is not a norm in industry. I want us to be careful, and most men are respectful. It is important for me to share that my intention here is not to male bash, not at all. Please understand that I am directing this conversation to experience I have had throughout the years by some unfavorable characters, we'll call them that. I want to emphasize I am speaking about myself, my perspective. This is my story, my experience. As I mentioned previously, I grew up with 3 brothers. Not much offends me. I have heard it all. I have smelled it all. I can easily brush things off. When uncomfortable advances occurred, I would literally in the past chalk it up to he just had too much to drink, which is an important topic. Boys will be boys. We've known each other for a long time. For a long time. He is better than that. I must have misread that. Do I really want to say anything? I don't want to be seen as a non-player. It's just part of the industry. Will they, the men, talk to each other and sabotage my reputation, stop doing business with me? Maybe I just need to loosen up and just join and have drinks with them. Become one of them. Wow. Sound familiar? I'm sure it does to many of you. I have been in industry, as I mentioned, 25 years. I have grown up in this industry. What qualifies me to speak today? I will tell you what, all my mistakes, that's what qualifies me. Look, I am not innocent. I fell into the trap that most young and older women do just to fit in. This is an ongoing issue, especially when alcohol is involved. And boy, there is a lot of that at our conferences. The topic of alcohol at events can be its own webinar. We need to bring that to light at another event. A couple years ago, I was victim of a horrific sexual attack at a conference, which still haunts me today. In my 25 years, I have never filed a claim or made a big deal of previous incidents to anyone. I dealt with it the best that I could and moved on, which we know now is not the right approach. We need to openly discuss this so this incident doesn't happen to somebody else. Nonetheless, that's how I handle things. This particular incident shook me to the core. What was different about this, you might ask? It was done by a trusted friend and colleague. This person I trusted with my whole being. He helped me grow my business. He was a mentor. It was a painful betrayal. But I don't want to talk about that. I want to discuss about the aftermath. I did report this to the CEO at the time of this association, not this one, a different association, and he did nothing. He kept him on. He was on for about a year. This gentleman was a highfalutin VP. A new CEO came in and immediately took action. I will always respect this man. He handled it professionally and amazingly. It was a year before he was released. And during that time, I noticed that friends and colleagues I have known for decades now had no idea how to approach me. Women I thought were my friends, and I know they are, not once approached me to simply say that they are sorry this happened to me. And this got me to thinking, how do we address that? How do we open that dialogue with other women? It became so uncomfortable, and my thought process is there's a lot of sexual harassment webinars, and it's obviously a serious incident, but how is the aftermath? How do we communicate? How do my colleagues that were in the same industry that I was part of, by the way, for 20 years, why are they uncomfortable talking to me about it? And those are things we need to explore. And honestly, some of it might be something that I created in my mind. Maybe I made it uncomfortable because I just didn't know how to approach that. I just want us to continue that discussion with a little different twist, take a different road on this. I feel like I've lost a lot of important industry colleague relationships, and it could be because they're part of that industry and they're friends with that gentleman and it's awkward. It could be because they're afraid of losing, they work for this association or they're very heavily involved and they don't want to look like they're choosing sides. I'm not sure what it was, but I just stopped thinking, got outside my head going, wow, I've never heard anyone talk about that. Like, how do women approach each other? And it's a serious incident, and it's a painful incident, and it's uncomfortable for everyone around. So we're not going to go into depth into this, but again, we talk a lot about maybe expanding the series. How do we handle that? How do we make the people that are around you comfortable enough to come talk to you? Why we need to explore why women won't come and approach. Why is it so uncomfortable to say, I'm sorry this happened? It's just something that's really come out of this. And I hope that we do. I hope that BAYWORKS and CWEA continues this discussion because it's an important one. And we don't ever want women to feel uncomfortable. I believe that's part of the reason why women don't report these, because they're going, I'm going to lose this friends because it's part of this group. We're all part of one group. How do we approach that? So again, I'm lightly touching on that. It's a serious topic. It really was painful, and it's still painful for me to talk about it. But I want us to look at that side of things. So I just want to bring that to the limelight, and everybody, if anybody has stories and has felt that awkwardness, please share that with us and let us know if you want to maybe touch upon that subject. I think it's really important because it's important to maintain relationship that we've had without being uncomfortable because of one person. So
Yeah.
that's my story.
No, I thank you so much, Marjorie, for sharing that and your perspective. And I agree. I think we tend to surface and bring that information out in our experiences, but we really can do a better job focusing on how we can provide resources or, tackle the aftermath, if you will. Margot, I know I had asked you as well, but I'm looking at our time and I was hoping, did you want to share anything there? Or are you okay if we move on to the last question or?
Can I make one brief comment?
Yes.
Which
Please
is those of us who find ourselves, particularly at the end of our career, in senior and management positions, leadership positions, really need to find a way to help people express these voices. And we need to provide opportunities for women within our workplaces to contact each other casually. We need to let them work in the same building so they see each other in the hallway. Sometimes just having another woman to say, did you hear that, is all you need. But you need that. And if you don't get that, it's very hard to live the day.
Yeah.
So
no, thank you for that. And I didn't mean to cut you
no
off.
worries, no worries.
Thank you.
Marjorie, thank you for your in-depth look there.
Thank you for the platform. Thank you for the platform.
Yes, and so we will definitely look to maybe some future webinars. We can go deeper into that. But I'm going to change, move from this topic of harassment and really touch lightly. Violet has this really great perspective. We talk about mentorship and having allies as a great way to support women in our industry to help get over those barriers and challenges. But there is a real lack of formal mentorship and it's not consistent across the board. And having this wonderful discussion with Violet, she had shared this idea of champions in the workplace. And so do you mind taking just a couple minutes sharing that today and then we'll wrap up with some Q&A. I love your perspective. I think we need to do more of this.
Yeah, thank you. And, before I launch into this, I just want to say thank you to Marjorie for sharing your story. And I think that that's definitely something that too many women can resonate with and something that we should definitely continue to talk about and how to support one another. So I just wanted to put that out there before moving on. So this idea that I have of champions, it's very much in line with the idea of an importance of mentorship, but a little bit separate. And I think it can be something that can be done. You can have a champion or you can be a champion without direct mentorship. And so I think, something that I have grown to understand in over the course of my career is that there have been people, a few people here and there, powerful people, not powerful in necessarily they hold power, but the power that they have provided to me in my career. Colleagues at my level, supervisors, managers who have become a champion for me. And I think the idea here is that, these people that you work with, they are out there who will actively stand up for you and vocalize their support for you, and to try and find that champion as much as possible. And in turn, also, you can be a champion for others and especially for women around you. And again, it doesn't really matter your position in your agency. Granted, the higher up you are, the more influence you have. But I think just that idea of either of finding your champion and of being a champion to someone else in your organization or multiple people, you can really help lift the voices up of others and help them with their career advancement. And so just as practical terms, this can mean, in a meeting, vocalizing support for someone. Hey, I just want to point out that this person has been doing really great work, because they're not going to probably stand up and say that themselves, and really be a voice for someone. I think also it's important to point out that, for this to work, you do have to be the individual who does the work, who shows the work, and you need to advocate for yourself as well. You can't just rely on someone else to advocate for you. So going back to that same idea of speaking up and advocating for yourself. But I think that, I want to plant a seed that to try and find someone in your agency who will be this champion for you, or to be that champion yourself now or in the future, to help the advancement, career advancement of the women that you know and you work with, and to help, diversify our workplaces a little bit more.
Absolutely. I love that so much, finding that colleague, that support, or again, just broaden that open. You don't need a formal mentorship to advance and move forward, or to grow, or have someone to share their feedback and all the different things we discussed. Wow, I cannot believe how quickly an hour passes by with you incredible women. I really enjoyed my time here. I want to thank every one of our panelists. I know we're right at that hour. I know I can stay on a little bit longer if we could try to, if the panelists can, to answer a few questions. We'll do our best. There was so much fun stuff to share. But I want to thank Tyrese and Dr. Violet Renick and Margot and Marjorie for your time today. Really appreciate your insight, and hope to have you all back for future panels and future discussions. Like I said, we just scratched the surface. All these could be separate webinars, and we hope that those that have attended enjoyed that and shared their feedback again and what they want to hear more about. With that being said, I don't know, Alec, if I was really just talking with the ladies, I don't know if anybody has perused the Q&A, if there's one or two that you want to shout out that we could try to answer.
Sure. And please add your questions. We'd love to start with some really great insights to share here. This is another tough one. It's from Julie Vital. Hopefully that's how you pronounce it. Were there any instances where you wanted to quit the field, and what made you stay?
Great question. Anybody feel that way at all?
Yes, I did a lot during my internship. I did an internship for 11 months unpaid. I completed 1,100 hours at that. So there was a lot of days, a lot of minutes, a lot of hours where I thought about quitting. My dad's in the field, so I was able to share some of the struggles I was going through at that time. But at the same time, I felt like I could not, because obviously I don't want to disappoint him. But at the same time, because he's a man, I also felt like he could not relate to me as a woman, as in, what does it feel like to be in a room with men?
Sure.
So there was a lot of times where I just sat there like, I don't know if I can do it. It don't even feel right anymore. But I kept going. I was a single mom at the time. So I kind of didn't have much of a choice but to stick with it, because I didn't have a backup plan. So just keep going, because there are going to be moments where it's dark. There's going to be hard times. There's going to be times where you're like, I don't even get along with any of these people. I don't even have a champion. I like what Violet was saying about a champion. There was a time where I didn't even have a champion at my treatment facility. But there's always someone. They don't even have to be wastewater related. You should always find someone in your life that can encourage you to stick with it, because you can do it.
So, thank you, Tyrese, for sharing that. I thought, Margot, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think too, it's just the incredibly traumatic issue of parenting and the role of mothers, and the pandemic has certainly, we had made a lot of progress, Karoline, I agree with you, and I think the last year has turned a lot of that clock back.
Yes.
And when my children were in their late grade school, they were both having some struggles in school, and I could not commit the incredible time and attention it takes to do this. And one of the things that East Bay Mud did was we found a way with another parent to job share. And for the agencies and industry to find, if we've learned nothing from this pandemic, it's that there are alternative ways of working even in this industry, and the industry really has to push forward with that. These issues do affect women way more dramatically, And I would have had to quit had I not been able to job share for a couple of years. But I was able to get my kids back on solid footing. They've both done very well, and I'm, all good. And I managed to advance my career after that. But it was a very troubling time. And again, it is an enormously demanding industry to work for. And being a parent is an enormously demanding thing too, which still falls mostly on moms.
Definitely, and such great points. I mean, we've come a long way, and we have a long way to go, but we see some of the shifts changing, the tides changing, right? I really want to respect everybody's time as well as the panelists, and I know there's so many great questions. We'll do our best to see if there's anything we could answer outside of this webinar. I'm going to end it with one very last question, and everybody gets a chance to answer. It is, what would you like to see in our next Women in Water webinar? Because we're going to have more. We have to dive into these topics. It's so important, and we could tell just by what we talked about today that there's so much interest. So if you want to take a moment as we end this webinar, thank you again, panelists and audience, for joining us today. Please, please, please put in the chat what are some of the topics that you want to hear about next, or you want us to dive deeper in, right? Thank you so much, everybody, for your time today.